Welcome to Unpacking the Athlete podcast, hosted by yours truly, Rob Martin. The word's so funny. Is it aquathlon?
Aquathlon.
It really is?
Aquathlon, yeah.
Aquathlon?
I always thought it was aquathlon, which would make more sense, but it's actually pronounced aquathlon.
Aquathlon.
Yeah, it's kind of silly.
Aquathlon. Man, if I say that wrong, oh well. Welcome to Unpacking the Athlete, a podcast dedicated to diving deep into what makes athletes who they are. Today's guest, a Michigan native that can do it all with endurance sports and do it well. Here are his career highlights. In 2016, he was the overall Olympic distance national champion at the USAT Age Group Nationals. In 2018, he was the overall Olympic distance world champion at the ITU Age Group Worlds. Also, the overall Michigan Ironman champion in the 70.3 distance, and has 16 national championships between Triathlon, Duathlon, Aquathlon, and Aquabike. He has won 4 different national championships in 1 year. Our guest today is Todd Buckingham. Welcome, Todd. Let's dive in, pun intended.
Thanks for having me, Rob.
Anytime. This is going to be fun. And I always like to start with kind of a fun icebreaker question. And since you're into the triathlons, that's 3 different disciplines, the first question is going to be, if you had to only do one of these for the rest of your life, which one would you choose and why? Swimming, running, or biking?
Oh, that's easy. Running, without a doubt. The others I kind of tolerate. The run is where I really enjoy. So I usually say it's not a race until I get off the bike and start running. So the run would for sure be the one that I would choose.
Well, that's actually kind of good then, since it's the last thing in that long event, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so I get to pass more people during the run instead of being passed at the end of the race. Me being passed usually happens at the beginning of the race, and then at the end I get to do the passing.
That would be me as well, because I can't swim. Out of the last 2, swimming and biking, which one is your least favorite of those, and which one is maybe kind of in the middle?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that depending on what we're talking about, in training, I don't like swimming because I don't like waking up at 5:30 in the morning to jump in a cold pool, especially during the Michigan winter. It's miserable. When I get in a race on the bike is probably my least favorite because I get passed more on the bike than the swim or the run. The bike is probably my weakness during the triathlon of the 3 disciplines. I'm 5'6", 130 pounds. So even with an FTP of 280, which is, 4.5 watts per kg, which, for some of your guests is like laughable, but for a little guy like me, that's okay. But yeah, I just don't put out the same absolute power, and I just can't keep up with guys. It's like my spindly little runner legs can't keep up.
Before we get into more on you, let's first explore those that may not know what the different variations in the triathlon are. So can you explain the difference between a sprint, an Olympic, half Ironman, and a full Ironman?
Yeah, for sure. And I'll even go one step further, but a triathlon is a swim, bike, and run in that order. Although now there are different race formats that sometimes they'll do a swim, bike, run. So you swim, bike, run, and then jump back in the water and do the same thing over again. Some of them will be mixed up where you do bike, run, swim. Traditionally, triathlon is swim, bike, run. And as you mentioned, there are typically 4 main distances that are competed in. The sprint is about a half-mile swim, a 12.5-mile bike, and a 5K or 3.1-mile run. An Olympic distance is twice as long, so it's 1,500-meter swim, so just shy of a mile, 25-mile bike, and a 10K or a 6.2-mile run. The 70.3 distance, as the name suggests, it's 70.3 miles. So it's a 1.2-mile swim, a 56-mile bike, and a half marathon, which is 13.1 miles for the run. And then the full Ironman distance is double that. So 2.4-mile swim, 112-mile bike, and a 26.2-mile marathon run at the end, which is just
insane.
Yes, exactly.
That is just crazy. Okay. Now, can you explain the difference between the duathlon and that other word I'm not good at pronouncing?
Aquathlon, yes. Duathlon, aquathlon, and aquabike are all kind of variations on a triathlon. So a duathlon is a run, bike, run, or sometimes they'll just do a bike time trial start to a run. So it's either run, bike, run, or bike run. The aquathlon is a swim, the aqua in aquathlon, swim, run, and then the aqua bike is a swim bike. So there's a little variation of each for, if somebody can't run for some reason, they could do an aqua bike, they could do the swim, the bike. If somebody doesn't like to bike, they could do the aquathlon, so the swim, run. And then the duathlon is for those who don't like to swim. You just run, bike, run. So yeah, I know. Me too. So yeah, there's a lot of different variations of triathlon that people can compete in. And as you mentioned in the intro, there are, national championships for those as well that people can compete in.
I've never heard of the aquabike version, so that's kind of new. Interesting.
Yeah.
Let's go to 2016 and have you talk about that USAT Nationals race and talk about how that went. Did the transitions all go well in each discipline? How did that finish?
That was actually a really fun race. So that was probably one of my first, I think that was my second national championship race that I ever did. My first one was 2015, and then I did 2016. And so going into the race, I didn't really know how I was going to fare. I finished 5th in my age group and 8th overall in 2015 at my first national championship. So I was hoping to improve upon that, but didn't expect to win by any means. The swim was okay. I don't really remember where I came out of the water, and the bike was decent. But when I got off the bike, I remember it was either my coach or my dad telling me that I was 3 minutes down from the leader in my age group, because at age group nationals, the age group national championships, you go off in your age group waves. So, it's 20 to 24, 25 to 29, 30 to 34, and so on. I was in the 25 to 29 age group, and my dad told me that I was 3 minutes behind the leader of the age group. So I did some quick mental math and went, I have to run 30 seconds per mile faster than this guy if I want to catch him by the finish. It was an out and back course. And when I got to the turnaround, I asked somebody how far ahead the other guy was, and they said 1.5 minutes. And I was like, okay, so I've basically cut it in half at the halfway mark. It's going to be a, tight finish. Getting closer, and I can finally see him up the road, but there's a mile left in the race, and I didn't catch him until about 400 meters to go. And I didn't want to just sit on his heels because I wanted to pass him and drop him. So I put in a big surge to pass him. And then with about 100 meters to go, I just cracked and I slowed down big time. And when I passed the guy, he actually said, "Hey, great run." Like, it sounded like he was fresh, and I couldn't even talk at that point. And because this was in Omaha, Nebraska, and it was a really hot day. I was hurting. And like I said, about 100 meters from the line, I cracked and I started slowing down. And thankfully, I held him off. I got him by 3 seconds. But after the race, he was talking to me and he said, "Yeah, I thought you were just slowing down and jogging it in. I was thinking I might be able to catch you again." And I said, I was not jogging it in. I just had nothing left. So interesting that you mentioned the transitions, because in triathlon, it's swim, bike, run, but you have to transition from the swim to the bike. You have to take your wetsuit off. You have to get your bike shoes on and your helmet. And then when you get off the bike, you have to take your bike shoes off, put your run shoes on, grab your belt. If you add up mine and the second place guys' finish times for the swim, bike, and run, we had exactly the same time. My transitions were 3 seconds faster than his. So the transition is actually where I won the race. For those out there who don't think practicing transitions are important, because I do, I practice transitions frequently. if you don't think it's important, I won a national championship by 3 seconds because of my transitions. That was pretty cool looking back on it and thinking, hey, actually practicing these transitions is important. So that was a really cool moment there.
Wow, that's crazy that it came down to the transitions, and it's good advice to others to practice transitions based on what just happened in that race for you.
Yeah.
That's
And even if it's not, you're not doing triathlon, but, cycling or running or swimming or whatever it is, it's not even about the transitions, it's about the little things, right? Like practicing the little things can make a big difference. I always say that it's not one big thing that you do during a race, it's all of the little things that add up and culminate in accomplishing that big thing.
yeah. So if you're on the mountain bike, practicing cornering can go a long way in a race.
Yeah, absolutely. Thankfully, in triathlon, we ride in a straight line. That's pretty much it. We don't have to do any cornering. It's
Right.
very, very untechnical. So, fortunately for me, because otherwise I would probably get left in the dust.
So if people want to practice, usually people have more time on the weekend. They could maybe do like a little block of maybe the swim to the bike on a Saturday, and then the next Saturday do the bike to the run, and just get good at that transition. Is or what would you recommend?
Yeah, we call it a brick workout in triathlon because that's what your legs feel like when you go from one event to the other is bricks. Typically, a swim to bike transition is a lot harder because unless you're swimming in open water and like you have your bike set up right outside the lake, typically we're swimming in pools, so the transition time is a little less. You can do it, it just makes it harder with being outside at the lake. But yeah, you just have your bike set up at the car. You would practice running out of the water, taking your wetsuit off, getting your bike shoes on, putting your helmet on, and then hopping on your bike. Typically, we do more bike to run brick workouts. So you can even do this riding the trainer and then going for a run outside or on a treadmill if you've got it. So you ride the bike, hop off, take your bike shoes off, put your run shoes on, grab anything else, and head out the door for your run. I actually do, when I'm leading up to key races, I do a bike run, bike run, bike run brick. So I'll warm up on the bike and then I warm up on the run and then I do intervals on the bike, hop off, do intervals on the run, hop back on the bike, do more intervals, hop back on the run and do more intervals. So it really trains your body to handle that brick feeling and feeling pretty awful for the first, quarter of a mile as you're out running.
That's great advice for those listening that are triathletes or up and coming triathletes for sure. What was the hardest part of the 2016 triathlon for you? Was it the swim or was it the bike?
That's a good question. And honestly, it's been so long. I don't know that I remember. I do remember that swim course, it was in a very shallow lake. And so it was pretty warm. And I don't think we had wetsuits. So I was not and am still not a great swimmer. My body position's very poor. I kind of drag through the water. That was probably tough. But then I also remember the bike on that course. There was one very, very steep hill that it was like you're in the smallest chain ring and the smallest gear and still just grinding up, 40 RPMs up this hill out of the saddle. I don't know if the listeners know much about lower Michigan, the lower peninsula here, but it's really flat and we don't have a lot of hills to train on. I like to say that the biggest hills that we train on are highway overpasses. So if that tells you anything about how good of a climber I am, even though I'm so little and so light, I'm a terrible climber. I do remember that hill and just thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to walk my bike up this hill. Fortunately, I didn't have to do that. Yeah, both the swim and the bike, I think were pretty challenging for me. And obviously the run for a different reason, just because I was, going into the black tunnel vision darkness of death feeling.
Yeah. So not having the wetsuit on decreases your buoyancy a little bit. Is that correct?
Yeah, and not only does it decrease the buoyancy, but it also is more hydrodynamic. So the wetsuit material itself is hydrodynamic and it just helps you slide through the water better. Whereas like your skin and your triathlon suit are not as hydrodynamic. So yeah, you lose some of that floating feeling, but you also lose some of the hydrodynamics of that as well.
Interesting. Yeah, because I think I've heard other people complain about, oh, the water's warm and I know they're going to not let us wear wetsuits.
Yeah, it's my worst nightmare.
Have you ever done a full Ironman?
No, I have not. I have done 3 or 4 70.3s, but I've never done a full Ironman. That's usually the first question that people ask when I tell them I'm a triathlete. Oh, have you done an Ironman? And I always say no. And then they say something like, oh, well, my brother's cousin's sister's nephew's niece's brother's younger sister did an Ironman. And I'm like, okay, cool. It's like, and for me, it's a little frustrating. I was actually talking to somebody about this the other day, is that he thought that the Ironman was the pinnacle of triathlon, like the sprint, Olympic, and 70.3 were all stepping stones to get to Ironman. And that is completely not the case at all. There are national and world championships and Olympic championships for sprint and Olympic distance, not just the 70.3 in full. I think because the 70.3 in full are broadcast a little more, and especially with Ironman having such a big platform that they do, that's what people think of when they hear triathlon. Like I said, at the Olympics, they don't race long course. They race the Olympic distance. They race a 1 mile swim, a 25-mile bike, and a 6.2 mile run. And so for me, when people ask, well, have you ever done an Ironman? I'm like, no, but you would think that 16 national championships and 4 world championships at the short course would be enough for them, but no, it's not. They're like, oh, well, when are you going to do an Ironman? Sorry, my accomplishments are not good enough until I do an Ironman. Like, yeah.
No,
So that's one of my pet peeves, but I will say that my girlfriend has done an Ironman, and so she always holds that over my head that, well, only one of us in the relationship has done an Ironman. Okay.
I wasn't asking it for that. I was asking.
No, I know.
But I can see that. And, that's why there's different disciplines and everything. Cycling's got different lengths for different people that have different strengths, just
Right.
like the sprint all the way to the full Ironman. That's totally different.
Yeah, exactly. And
so,
so
go ahead.
As a somebody who kind of follows cycling, but not super closely, the Tour de France is, have you done the Tour de France? No, then you're not a real cyclist. Like, that's what I think of when I think of cycling, is the Tour de France. But obviously, like, now that I've been following a little more, and my friend Paige Onweller that we talked about a little before we started recording here, but there's gravel biking and the mountain biking championships and time trial championships, and there's so many different variations. I think cycling probably has more variations than triathlon does. I mean, Phil Guyman, doing his YouTube videos and going for the KOMs and like the hill climb world records and stuff like that. So there's so many different variations. So just because, you didn't do the Tour de France, oh, well, then you're not a real cyclist. Like, that's silly. And that's kind of the same way that I feel about triathlon and people asking if you've done an Ironman. So, yeah.
No, you've got national championships. That's all you need.
Right. And you know what? Honestly, would I rather be racing for an hour or 2 for a sprint or Olympic, or would I rather be racing for 9 or 10 with a full Ironman? Like, it just sounds so boring. And in the few 70.3s that I've done, it just doesn't feel like racing as much, because you're going so much slower and you're not really redlining it because you're going for 4 hours. And so I like to do the shorter stuff because I really feel like I'm pushing my physiological capabilities, and that's what I like. Great for you if you like the 70.3 and the full distance. Like, I'm not taking anything away from those either. I think that, all of the disciplines and all of the distances have their own challenge, right? They're all hard. It's just like, what kind of hard do you want to endure? Do you want the lungs burning, legs aching feeling, or do you want the slow grind and mentally exhausting day on the on the bike and the run doing an Ironman. So they're all presenting their own challenges. I'm not taking anything away from any of those. I just like the short stuff because I get to get done twice as fast and then I get to eat. So that's what it's all about, right? Isn't that
Right.
why we do this stuff?
Right. I agree. So for us with mountain biking, there are endurance events, and I just don't like those as much as I like the normal 90-ish minute,
Yeah.
give or take mountain bike race. So I totally understand. Let's also talk about that win in the 70.3 Michigan Ironman. And maybe can you paint a picture on how that race went?
It's funny because I had no intention of doing it, but my girlfriend was doing it and she wanted me to do it with her. I kind of signed up pretty last minute. It was maybe a month or two beforehand because, well, it was September. So it had to have been like a month beforehand because the age group national championships are in August and this race was in September. So I probably signed up a month before the race actually happened. I didn't really know what to expect going in. I had looked at some of the times from last year and was like, yeah, I could probably get pretty close to that. I mean, you never know, right? You never know who's going to show up, and you can just go out and do the best race that you can at the time. So I did all my warm up stuff, getting ready for the race and everything. And I put my wetsuit on before the race. And as I was putting it on, the left calf split open. So it just burst at the seams. I must have been lifting legs too much or something recently because it just like blew out. So now I'm trying to make a decision. And this is like 10 minutes left before the race even starts. I'm trying to make a decision. Do I have time to run back to my car to get my other wetsuit? Because I had another wetsuit, but it would take me 10 minutes to just get to the car, let alone get to the car and get back and put the other wetsuit on. Do I cut the wetsuit right at the knee so that that hole isn't gaping in my calf, or do I just leave it and see what happens? I decided to leave it because I just really didn't have any time to do anything else. So I had a hole, I don't even know. It's probably from top to bottom at the start of the race. It was probably 4 inches, but at the end of the race, or when I got out of the water, it was from the knee down to the ankle, just a huge hole. And so as soon as I jumped in the water, I could feel it dragging, and I could just feel the drag on my leg. At the start of the race, my buddy and I were racing kind of together because he and I knew that one of us was probably going to win just based on the other people who were there. We started together because in Ironman branded races, and for those of you that don't know, Ironman is not a distance. Ironman is the brand of the race. So you could do a 70.3 distance race and have it not be Ironman. You could do a full distance race and have it not be Ironman. But when we're talking about Ironman, that's just the brand of the race. So my buddy and I started together, and because we had looked at some of the results or some of the people registered, we knew that we were going to be probably battling it out for the top two positions. And even if we weren't, we wanted to start together because we're pretty close to the same abilities. So we started together, we jumped in, and like I said, I could feel the drag on my calf. But at that point, what can you do? It was a pretty cloudy day in Frankfurt that day. I really couldn't see very well in the water, and my goggles were fogging up a little bit. So the course was actually like a T. So you swim out, and then you swim to the right, and then you swim all the way back to the far left, and then back to the middle, and then come back down. As I was swimming across the top of the T, they have buoys set up for sight buoys so that you can see where you're going. And I just kept passing buoy after buoy after buoy. And I was like, the turn buoy has to be here somewhere. Like, this swim feels like it's taking forever. And I was just ready to be done, and my goggles were fogging up and I couldn't see. There were a couple people I was swimming with, and I just tried to stay right on their feet. But as we were going back in, the person I was following looked like they were going off course. And so I stopped, cleaned my goggles out, and kept swimming. And sure enough, they were going a little off course. But by the time that I stopped, cleaned my goggles, got my sight back, and started swimming again, it probably cost me 15 seconds. So they had pulled away. And by the time that I had caught back up, because they had gone off course, I was right with them again. And it probably would have been the same thing for me to just stay on their feet and follow them in. That was kind of a bummer. But as soon as I got out of the water, I saw there were only a few people ahead of me. I think I was the fourth one out of the water, which was really good for me because I'm not a super great swimmer. But I was fourth out of the water. And then being from a short course background, my transitions are really fast. And so I was the fourth one out of the water, but I was first one out on the bike. So, and I even think that somebody beat me out of the water by a solid 30 seconds. And I was out on the bike somewhere about a minute faster than them. It's kind of funny when I see, especially when I see Ironman transition times. And I understand with Ironman, it's different because you do like a full change and the transitions are usually really long runs. But I do some coaching as well. And I have a couple athletes who have done Ironmans here at the end of the season, and their transition times are, 15, 20 minutes. And I'm like, transition should be shorter than 2 minutes. Like, you got to get in and out. But, they're doing full changes and going to the bathroom and stuff like that. So yeah, I was first out on the bike, and I really just tried to push hard because I'm not a super strong cyclist because of the aforementioned skinny chicken little runner legs. I just tried to push hard for the first little bit, and Paige actually helped me with best bike split before the race. So we best bike split the course and kind of looked at where I needed to put out more power, less power to kind of hit the time that I wanted to. I knew that the first part of the course was a good spot to put out some power, and I gained some time there. And at the first turnaround, so the course is kind of weird where you do an out and back and then keep going past the transition area and then go north, and then there's another out and back that way. So it was a short out and back to the south and then a long out and back to the north. So at the first out and back, I took a time split to see where my buddy was, and he was already a minute and a half behind me, and that was maybe 5 miles into the bike, which I was like, okay, I must have come out of the water way ahead of him because that's a lot of time to put on somebody in, 5 miles on the bike. And it turns out I only beat him out of the water by 25 seconds, but I must have really pushed well that first part on the bike. Just riding. I mean, like I said, the bike is so long and you can't push as hard on the 70.3 distance as you can the Olympic. So the bike I just get kind of bored. I'm like, okay, is this over yet? When we get to the 25-mile mark, which is usually where I'm done with a race in a triathlon, I was like, I still have more than 2 times this to go. So just strap in. So, I really tried to make sure that I was doing the right things with nutrition. So I was eating every 25 minutes and drinking every about the same 20 to 25 minutes. And I had a lot of calories and a lot of hydration because I knew that eating and drinking on the bike sets you up to have a good run. I'm also an exercise physiologist for my profession, and I teach exercise physiology to undergraduate students here at Grand Valley. And I'm trying to practice what I preach because at the last few 70.3s that I've done, I always found that I really just ran out of energy at the end of the bike and didn't have any energy on the run and just felt like I couldn't run very hard. So really tried to make sure that I ate and drank enough, and that worked pretty well, eating every 25 minutes. So I did get passed on the bike around mile 38. This guy just flew by me, and it wasn't my buddy. It was some other guy, but he passed me like I was standing still. And I looked at him as he passed me, and he was a big guy. Like, he's just putting out 340 watts as he's cruising by me. And I'm like, yeah, there's no way that he's going to be able to outrun me. As long as I can keep him within 5 minutes, he's not going to run under 120. So I knew that I was probably pretty safe, but he's the only one who passed me. And then coming off the bike, I got a time split, and I think he was a couple minutes ahead, maybe 3. But by the end of the first mile, I think I had already caught him on the run. My transition was pretty quick, just get the shoes off. And I don't actually take my shoes off. I keep my shoes clipped into the bike, take my feet out of the shoes, and then run barefoot through transition so that I can just slide my shoes on and run out transition that way. And it's just much faster. I ran out of transition, and I wanted to be conservative on the run because I really just didn't want to blow up, because I knew that this guy was ahead of me. He wasn't going to beat me. My buddy, who was also racing, is a really good runner. He ran at Saginaw Valley in college, and I played baseball, and that's how we knew each other because we both went to the same undergrad. I knew he's a good runner, but I also knew that I had about a 3-minute gap on him, and he's a good runner, but he's not that good of a runner that he's going to run a 110 to beat me. I knew that I wanted to just stay conservative, and I was just clipping off 540 miles pretty consistently, and it felt really easy. And that was the best part about it, was that I really wasn't pressing a whole lot. And I had the lead cyclist with me, and he was just talking to me the whole time. He's like, "So what'd you eat for breakfast this morning?" And like other stuff like that. It was just really funny. And I was like, "Yeah, well, typically I've got this, this, and this." And so we were just kind of chatting the whole time. And he's like, "You know what? You're really inspiring me. Like, I'm going to get back out and I'm going to do this. Like, I haven't done a triathlon in a while because I had my hip replaced." And so that was kind of funny as we were just riding along and running for the run. But it was a 2-lap run course. So it was out and back, out and back. And so I saw my buddy, multiple times as he was behind me, and I was taking time splits, and he was cutting a few seconds into me here and there, but it wasn't anything that I was like, okay, I really need to crank it down now. But around mile 9, I started to get a bit tired, and I was like, okay, this is all right, got to focus up here for a bit, but still, just holding the same pace. And then the last mile, I really wanted to push it because I really didn't feel like I had pushed it a whole lot the rest of the race. So my last mile, I closed in 5:28, I think it was. And yeah, I ended up going 4:02 for the race, and I ran a 1:14:50 something. And yeah, won by about 3 minutes. So that was pretty cool. It was a good way to end my season. It was kind of unexpected because I really didn't have any plans to do that race before, like a month before the race.
Right.
So
That's solid, man. Let's switch gears a little, and maybe, you won 4 national championships in 1 year. Can you talk about each one of those different events and explain what they are?
yeah, that was a goal that I set for myself. I think that was 2021. So it was right after 2020 and, not having any races. And I was like, how cool would it be if I could win a national championship in each of the different multi-sport disciplines that USA Triathlon has to offer? I was like, okay, well, I got to do the triathlon, the duathlon, the aquathlon, and the aquabike. Really, it was just kind of a personal goal. And so the Duathlon Nationals were first, and that was down in Tuscaloosa, Alabama in May. I did that one, and I won that one. And then Aquathlon Nationals was in June out in California, and I was able to check that one off the list. Triathlon Nationals was in August, and I knew that one was probably going to be the hardest because triathlon is just the most competitive of the 3. I do the sprint and the Olympic distance at the national championships. The sprint distance is on Sunday and the Olympic distance is on Saturday. So you do the Saturday race and then the Sunday race. And I didn't win the Olympic distance race on Saturday. So I was like, I really need to lock it in on Sunday if I want to complete this goal. And thankfully I did. And then the last one to check off the list was the Aquabike Nationals. And that was in September. And I knew that one for me is the weakness because it doesn't have the run, and the run is my strength. So I knew that was going to be a challenge. And especially coming out of the water, there were some stairs, but they were kind of covered in sand. And I didn't see them because we were running into the sun out of the water. And I had my dark goggles on and I really couldn't see anything. I hit my foot so hard on the stair that I'm pretty sure I broke my toe. I never got an x-ray, but it was sore for months afterward. It's definitely a little misshapen now. So thankfully there was no run because I don't know that I could have run.
Oh.
But yeah, that was really cool because like I said, it was just kind of a fun challenge that I had for myself. And then wouldn't you know it, the next year in 2022 here, USA Triathlon implemented this thing where they would give a multi-sport athlete award of the year to anybody who does aquathlon, aquabike, triathlon, and duathlon in the same year. And I'm like, you guys stole this from me. Like, that was my idea. And it's really hard to do that, right? Because it's 4 different races. I went from Alabama to California to Milwaukee to New York. It's expensive. It's time consuming. And I was like, I can't do this again. there's no way. And so that was a little disappointing, but it was still a cool goal that I had for myself and that I was able to accomplish. So I was pretty proud of that. And that was a fun season. And really that's kind of what the goal of it was, because we didn't race in 2020. And so I really just wanted to have fun with 2021 and kind of stretch the limits and see what I could do.
That's an epic year for sure. I can't even imagine. That's all, like you said, it's a lot of travel for. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not one place. You're all over the place. You're preparing for different events. That's a big commitment. But I can see it being fun at the same time if you have the flexibility. And so obviously you had some flexibility last year to do that.
A little bit, but it was a lot of, just taking PTO. And
okay.
Fortunately, at the time I was working for a local hospital system, Mary Free Bed, and I did performance testing. So I had a performance lab where I would do VO2 max testing or lactate threshold testing or sweat composition testing. So, really just like tuning in people's physiology to themselves so they could train more optimally. It's nice to be able to work in a situation like that and actually practice what I preach. It was, I wouldn't say easy to get the time off, but I could, because I was a department of one, I could essentially take time off whenever I needed to and work my schedule around, when I would have clients, so that I was able to just take a couple days off here and there, like a Thursday, Friday to go do those races.
That's cool. Talk about the Warrior Dash and maybe explain what that is and how many have you done?
Yeah, the Warrior Dash is a 5K mud run through obstacles. So that's actually what really got me into running, because I played baseball, basketball, and soccer in high school, and I played baseball at Saginaw Valley. And I never liked running for fun. My dad always says that when I was little, I used to say, if I'm not chasing a ball, I'm not going for a run. If that tells you anything, yeah, running was not something that I wanted to do. But when I finished playing baseball, I needed something to do, and my mom had signed our family up for the Warrior Dash. And so I was like, well, I should probably be able to run a 5K before I try to run the 5K through the mud and obstacles. So I started running, and I had some friends on the Saginaw Valley track team that I tried to run with. And I say tried because they're easy runs at 7-minute pace. For a mile, I was just toast. There's no way that I was doing that. I had to run on my own, and, it was a slow progression, but it was fun because I'm an athletic guy, especially, I think for a runner, because I feel like runners get a stigma of, they're just these skinny string beans that just run in a straight line. I felt like the Warrior Dash would suit me because I am a little more athletic and, can climb up and do all the obstacles and stuff. And so, yeah, the first one we did was in just outside Chicago. I think it was Joliet, Illinois. And that had to have been in 2010. And so from there, I did one pretty much every year up until 2013 or 14. So it was in Illinois, and then there were a couple in Michigan here. And I think I won 4 Michigan Warrior Dash races. And my claim to fame is that, and the listeners might not know this if they're not in the running world, but Noah Droddy is an American distance runner, and he has one of the fastest marathon times of an American of all time. I think he's like in the top 5 or something like that. And he did a Warrior Dash race here in Michigan, and I beat him.
Oh.
So I like to say that, well, if I had kept doing the whole running thing and just stuck with running, that I would also, the transitive property says that I would then beat him at the the marathon too. So that was kind of cool. That was back, gosh, yeah, like I said, maybe 2012 or 13. But I also did the Warrior Dash World Championships, which was really cool experience. So the first year, I think it was in Sacramento, California, and then it was in Tennessee somewhere, or maybe it was the other way around. Doesn't really matter. Anyway, the race was so cool. It had such big names in the race, like professional runners were going to do this race because it was a $30,000 check for the winner. And they paid up through 5th place, I think. Even 5th place got $5,000 or something like that. Oh. So Max King, for any of the listeners who know anything about the running world or trail running, Max King is a one of the best runners in the world. He qualified for the Olympic trials in the steeplechase, in the 3,000 meter steeplechase, and in the marathon. You're talking a 2-mile race and a 26-mile race. He is, super talented athlete, and he's a world-class trail runner. I think he had the 100K American record for a while. He averaged, or maybe it was the 100-mile. Either way, one of them. He averaged sub 6-minute pace for a 100-mile race or something like that, which is just absolutely nuts. I think that's since been broken, but yeah, just super talented runner. And he showed up and he won both of the races and both years back to back. I think it was the second year that he had a race in Seattle, like the day before coming to do the Warrior Dash in Tennessee, and he still kicked everybody's butt in that race. So it's just like, oh my gosh, and that was before I got super serious about triathlon training. And I was just like, man, like, how could this guy beat me? Like, he raced yesterday and then flew across the country and raced today. How is this possible? But I wasn't in as good of a shape as I thought I was or felt that I should have been. So, obviously when you're comparing yourself to the best athletes in the world, it doesn't matter what kind of shape you're in, you're going to get beat. But yeah, that's kind of what got me started in the whole running thing, was that, well, I should probably be able to run a 5K before I try to do it through the mud and obstacles. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's fun. And yeah, I guess to give a little background on what Warrior Dash is. So yeah, you just kind of, you run, and there's a variety of obstacles. And honestly, I don't even know if the Warrior Dash is a thing anymore, but it's kind of like the Spartan race or the Tough Mudder, where you're, crawling up the cargo nets or over walls with the ropes or under the barbed wire through the mud, obstacles like that. But in between the obstacles, you have the runs to do. The difference of the Warrior Dash is that there's no spear tosses or anything like that there is in Spartan races. You don't have to do any burpees if you mess something up. It's a little bit different than the others, but they're kind of all under the same principle as far as it's an obstacle course 5K.
Yeah. While we're on the topic of running, how often do you replace your running shoes? And what is the brand that you prefer to run in?
That is a great question. I don't replace my running shoes near as often as I should because they're very expensive, the running shoes that I buy. I wear the Nike Zoom Fly 4s for my training shoes, for my easy running shoes. I wear the Nike Next Percents for speed days or track workouts, and I wear the Nike Alpha Flies for races. If you know anything about these shoes, you know that the Alpha Flies cost $275. The Next Percents cost maybe they were $250 at the time when I bought them, but they're probably somewhere around $200 now. And the Zoom Fly 4s are, somewhere in the ballpark of $180. So I don't replace them nearly as often as I should. I kind of wear them out until they literally can't be run in anymore. And you can kind of see the carbon fiber plate, because the foam has worn out so much that the carbon fiber plate is showing. And I know when it's time to get new shoes, when I'm out for a run and I can hear, it sounds like there's a rock underneath my foot, and it's just the carbon fiber plate scraping on the ground. So I would say the thing with these shoes is that they don't last very long. The Alpha Flies and the Next Percents maybe last 200 miles. The Zoom Fly 4s will last a little bit longer. So as I'm just looking through some of my shoes here, like these Next Percents I've worn for 145 miles, these Next Percents for 56. So I still got some miles on those. My training shoes, it looks like 300 or 400 miles is the cut that I have, that I really want to change those out. Some shoes you can go more. Some shoes it's much, much less. For the most part, I try to get at least 200 miles out of my shoes, if not more.
Thinking about your past, did you say baseball, basketball, and soccer in high school?
Yeah.
Out of those sports, which one do you think helped you the most with running, being a good runner?
Probably soccer. And in hindsight, I kind of wish that I would have tried out for the soccer team at Saginaw Valley instead of the baseball team, because I was probably honestly better at soccer than I was at baseball, but I liked baseball more because my dad and I used to go down. We had a baseball field a block away from our house, and we would go down to the baseball field after school every day, and he would hit me fly balls for hours. Just that connection with my dad and really just liking baseball more, because I didn't practice soccer outside of soccer season, but I practiced baseball pretty much year round. I played travel ball during the summer. I had a batting cage, not a batting cage, but like a tee and a net set up in my backyard. Even my junior year, I was dual enrolled through Ferris State because I grew up in Big Rapids. I was dual enrolled through Ferris State, so I didn't have a fourth hour class in high school, and I had lunch the next hour. So I would go out to the batting cages at school and hit off the tee for an hour during my fourth hour period and then go in and eat lunch. So I just liked baseball more. I practiced it more. So I wanted to play it in college. Like I said, in hindsight, I was probably better at soccer because I was a good runner, even though I didn't run. And baseball running, it's sprinting 60 or 90 feet or, going to catch a fly ball, whereas soccer is pretty continuous. I was all state in soccer, but I don't even know if I got all region in baseball. I might have been all region. I don't remember, honestly. I was better at soccer than I was baseball, especially for never practicing it. So I would say probably soccer prepared me the best for triathlon, just with all the running that was involved.
What position were you in baseball?
Center field.
What about soccer?
Striker.
Okay.
I like to score the goals.
Yeah. And you still got to do a lot of running.
Yes, still got to do a lot of running. Yep. I had the school record for goals in a season at my high school until my brother broke it 3 years later. And he decided to only break it by one goal. I was like, come on, if you're going to break it by like 10.
Yeah.
Not one. But it has since been broken even more than that. We're old now. We've been out of high school for, gosh, I don't even know how long it's been, 15 years for me. So there's these kids coming up nowadays that way, way better than I ever was.
You're not that old, man.
I sure feel like it sometimes.
Yeah, I bet. Thinking about growing up and maybe what the best investment was that maybe you made in yourself or a parent made in you, maybe a family member, friend that was most helpful to you along the way being an athlete?
I think both my parents, because when I was in high school, I didn't have a job. My job was school and sports, because their theory was that you have your whole life to work. You are not going to get to play sports for your entire life. Yet here I am, 15 years later, still playing sports. And it's great too, because my parents are awesome. They come to all of my races. Like, I've raced world championships in Mexico and Switzerland and Australia, and they come to all of those races. And it's great having them at all my races. My dad is still my bag man, so he'll carry my bag before and after the race so that I don't have to do it. And so, both my parents not making me or my brother have a job, because school was our job and sports were our job, because they're both in education. My dad was an elementary principal and my mom was a high school teacher, guidance counselor. They both did it all at the public schools in Big Rapids, and they understood the benefit of being able to focus on grades, because when I went to college, I didn't have to pay tuition because my grades were so good. I got a full tuition scholarship at Saginaw Valley. And then doing my master's, I went to Central and I got a full tuition scholarship. And then I went to Michigan State for my PhD and I got a full tuition scholarship. So I spent 11 years in college and I have no student debt. So my parents not, making me work and saying, focus on school, focus on sports, that was probably the biggest investment that was made in me growing up. And I like to say, because I actually calculated how much money I saved on tuition from the 11 years in school. It was almost $200,000. And I like to tell my parents
more than that, because you had interest.
Yeah, well, I was just totaling up the credit hours and how much each credit hour would have cost for 11 years of school. But yeah, the interest that has not even taken into account, because I didn't take into account like, oh, well, if I got a loan for this much, how much would it be? But yeah, just $200,000 of tuition worth of money. And so I like to say to my parents, I'm like, hey, I was looking at this thing, but like, do you guys think you might want to chip in and like maybe you want to buy it for me for Christmas or something? And they're like, because I'm like, well, I did save you $200,000 when I was, in college. They say, no, you saved yourself $200,000 going to college. I was like, touche. So
I'm gonna have to agree with you. I think that was instilling that in you was probably the best thing. I mean, that's a lot of money you saved right there.
yeah, absolutely. And that's something that I completely agree with, because yeah, you only have so much time to play team sports, especially even if you play professional sports as an adult. What, 30 is retirement age for most. Some don't even make it that long. If you're Tom Brady, yeah, you play until you're 87, but that's the exception, not the rule.
Right.
So yeah, do it while you can, have fun. I mean, luckily for me, my profession now is exercise science based, and it really has a lot to do with sports. So having a background in a lot of different sports really helps me being able to translate and talk to athletes of all different, not only levels from beginner to expert, but all different sports. So
yeah, that's nice. And that's a good background to have for sure. Did anyone influence you to get into triathlons? Did you ever look up to like a hero or an idol? Did you have someone?
I didn't follow triathlon until I really started doing triathlon. So I had no idea who anybody in the sport was.
Okay.
I didn't really have an idol or anything growing up. And really, I say growing up, I didn't start triathlon until I was 22, 23. Yeah. So it's been about 10 years that I've been doing it now. Actually, that's not true. When I did my first few triathlons here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, there was a guy named Jimmy Minima, and he was sponsored by Bissell, and he was just always winning the local races. And there was one race that I did that I finished 4th overall, and I was just off the podium, and I was like, man, if I could ever be on the same podium as Jimmy, that would just be awesome. I would love that. And I saw him at the race, the Reeds Lake Triathlon. I saw him at it this year, and I've won that race, I don't know, the last however many years. And he's not racing anymore, but he's coaching the Calvin women's triathlon team. And I saw him at the race, before the race, and I kind of told him that story, that like, hey, I just want you to know how much of an impact you had on me, and I always just wanted to be on the podium with you. And so that was kind of a cool moment. It was like a full circle moment that I got to share with him. So yeah, he was probably the only one that I ever looked up to in the sport, because like I said, I started it really late and I knew no professional athletes in triathlon.
Those full circle stories are really cool. Yeah. I like when that happens. I've heard quite a few of those, and they're inspiring kind of too, get to where you are from where you were.
Yeah, for sure.
Where did you grow up? Speaking of growing up.
I grew up in Big Rapids, Michigan. I went to Big Rapids High School. I've lived my whole life in Michigan. The furthest I've ever lived from my parents is 2 hours, when I was at Michigan State. I mentioned my schooling. So I grew up in Big Rapids. I went to Saginaw Valley for my undergrad, and then to Central Michigan in Mount Pleasant for my master's, and then to Michigan State in Lansing for my PhD. Now I'm in Grand Rapids. So
yeah. Okay. So you started with baseball, basketball, and soccer in high school. In college, you transitioned to baseball solely, basically. And then when you started going into further college, for higher degrees, you started doing some running stuff. And then when you were probably, you still could have been in school when you started triathlons, right? For sure.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because I was in school for 11 years. So
yeah.
I started triathlon during my master's when I was at Central. I think it was like 2012 or 13 that I did my first one. I definitely kind of transitioned the opposite end of the spectrum. Baseball is a high explosive, fast movement sport, and triathlon is very, very long compared to, even a sprint triathlon is very long compared to a baseball play, because the baseball play, you swing the bat, it lasts a second.
Yeah.
Running to first base lasts 3 seconds. Catching a fly ball and running down a fly ball lasts 5 seconds at most. So definitely opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, highly explosive.
Yeah.
Thinking about a triathlon and you have a race coming up this week, let's say, and it's Monday or it's Sunday the weekend before the race coming up on the following weekend. How much of your time during that week would be spent swimming on average? Just average.
So I'd still swim 3 days a week. I pretty much keep my frequency the same. So I'll swim
Okay.
Monday, Wednesday, Friday, just kind of doing less volume,
Yep.
more race pace intensity. Swimming is 3 days a week. Biking for a race week would probably still be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And if the race is Saturday, I would do a Friday bike too. And then running, I would probably do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I would probably do all 5 days running, to be honest, maybe 4. Yeah, I probably wouldn't run on Wednesday if I biked on Wednesday. So yeah, probably 4 bikes, 4 runs, and 3 swims, but just much shorter. I would do some bricks, do some, I think you called them openers, more race pace intensity type stuff. And the day before the race, I would do a swim, bike, and a run, just to make sure that all of the equipment was working properly and feeling good and keeping the touch there so that the body isn't flat on race morning.
Yeah. Okay. Very nice. Thinking of triathlons again, does anyone stick out in your mind as being your biggest competition along the way? And do you have any good stories of a race where you kind of went head to head?
Here in Grand Rapids, there was one guy who he and I were always battling. Well, I say we were battling. He always beat me. So it wasn't much of a battle. It was a one-sided rivalry. But Louis Caidetto was his name, and he raced for the University of Michigan while I was at Michigan State. And so it was kind of like that kind of rivalry too, where we would always race against each other and he would always win. And we really only raced each other maybe once a year at the Grand Rapids Triathlon. And he would beat me, I think he beat me by a couple minutes the first year and then less the second year. And then he beat me by maybe like 20 seconds the last year that he beat me. And then I finally beat him, back in, I think it was 2016, actually, before I won the national championship. So the Grand Rapids Triathlon is in June, and I finally beat Louis at that race. And for me, that was like the national championship because he was just always beating me. And so I knew that year was going to be good when I finally beat him in that race. He was probably my biggest rival, but like I said, it wasn't much of a rivalry, and he's just the nicest guy too. So it's like, I couldn't be mad at him for beating me because he was just so nice and so humble after winning too. So yeah, he, I would say kind of when I first started out, he was my biggest rival. And now there's another local guy. His name is Brian Reynolds. He's more focused on the long course stuff. So it's kind of not fair for me to just be focused on short course and him doing short and long course. But he and I are very even. In the race in 2021 at the national championships, the Olympic distance race that I didn't win, he won that race. He beat me by, I don't know, a minute or something. And then I came back and beat him in the sprint the next day. So right now he's probably my biggest rival because we just go back and forth. But again, one of the nicest guys. It's hard to be mad at him when he beats me because, he's just so nice. And I think we have a mutual respect for each other because we both bring out the best in each other. And I even told him after one of the races, like, I would not have pushed myself as hard during that race if it wasn't for you. Like, you're part of the reason why I still want to be as fast as I am because I don't want you to beat me.
Good, healthy competition, man.
Yeah, and that's something that, with team sports, you get a lot more than you do in individual sports just because of the nature of the sport. People are always coming in and out with individual sports, and, some people might not even do triathlon anymore, or, they just pick it up. So they, you really can't have much of a rivalry. Whereas team sports, it's a lot easier to develop that with a team as opposed to an individual person.
Yeah. Do you incorporate any strength training into your routine throughout the year?
I do. I do strength pretty frequently, usually twice a week. I mostly do body weight stuff, but here in the off season, I'll be doing heavy lifting for power to help improve running efficiency. And so I'll do like squats or deadlifts and really just heavy weight, low reps. A lot of people think that runners or endurance athletes need to do a lot of reps, but that's actually the opposite because essentially muscular endurance, you're doing that when you're out for a ride or when you're out for a run. Every stride that you're taking is essentially a quarter squat. And so you're doing a quarter squat, thousands of times. Why would you do that in the gym too? You want to lift heavy because that improves your neuromuscular efficiency and it makes you more powerful. And then you can take longer strides for the same amount of energy. And so it just makes you more efficient. So yeah, for all those endurance athletes listening, you want to lift heavy and quickly. You don't really want to focus on muscular endurance or even just lifting heavy, but slowly, because muscular strength is not going to be the same as muscular power. Power involves that time component of quickness. So if you think of the Olympic lifts like the clean and jerk, the snatch, those kinds of things are quick. I'm not saying you should do those things because they're very complicated moves, but even doing a squat or a deadlift where you go down very slow and then explode up, or even plyometric exercises like box jumps or split squat jumps, things like that. Those are the kinds of things that I incorporate in my training because knowing the science behind everything, I know that that's the stuff that's going to get me to be better.
I agree 100%. The science backs it up. Squats
Yep.
equal watts on the cycles, boys.
There it is.
And I like to throw kettlebells in too because they're really easy to drop if you get into trouble.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Kettlebells are great. I'm actually kettlebell certified instructor. So
Nice.
yeah.
We did that when I was at one of the gyms I worked at as well. I don't know if I still have it or if you had to keep up on it, but yeah. TRX certified, kettlebell certified. TRX is good too. It's sometimes tough to get the weight you need.
Yeah. TRX. I have one and it is nice, but definitely, yeah, sometimes can be hard to get super heavy.
Yeah. As far as recovery goes, what types of devices or stretches or exercises do you use to help recover? It can be foam roller, handheld roller, massager, percussive therapy, compression.
I sleep and I eat. Those are my recovery tools. And I think one of the big things with today's technology and just everything that people think is that like I need to foam roll, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to sit in the recovery boots, I need to get in an ice bath, I need to do whatever. And honestly, that's just not the case. There is no evidence to support these things actually working at a physiological level. They may make you feel better and like psychologically, but from a muscular standpoint, there is no change that happens when you foam roll or when you sit in an ice bath or anything like that that actually is a marker of improvement in muscular repair or anything like that. So no, I don't do any of that stuff mainly because it just takes time to do it. And I would rather have somebody just lay down on the couch for 30 minutes than spend 30 minutes foam rolling because essentially like when you're sitting in the recovery boots or you are getting massage or something like that, just the act of laying down and turning your brain off is going to be just as beneficial as anything else because people want to feel like they're actually active participants in their recovery, but that's kind of counterproductive to recovering because when you're recovering, you don't want to be doing anything. And by doing things, you're actually setting yourself back. Ice baths should probably be avoided unless you are doing it the week of a race and just trying to get inflammation down because you had a hard workout, but why are you doing a hard workout on race week? Don't do that. That's a terrible idea. And I think another thing with today's world is that people over recover. What happens when you're training? So your fitness level it's at, let's say 80%. When you train, you drop that fitness level to 75% because when you train, you're actually like breaking down your body. So you're dropping down to 75%. Well, when you let your body recover on its own, it's going to recover up to 83%. All right. When you do one of these recovery modalities, instead of dropping from 80 to 75, you're going to drop from 80 to 79. And then the body is going to be like, okay, well, I don't really need to repair myself that much to improve because I'm not undergoing that much stress. So I'm just going to repair back to 80. So you're not going to improve as much because you're over recovering. And I think that's a big issue. People take, supplements and, do the ice baths and things like that, when really, like, you want to break your body down and you don't want to assist in the recovery, because when your body recovers on its own, that's going to have a greater impact than if you are aiding in that recovery, because it kind of artificially increases or decreases how much stress your body went under. So I don't do any of that stuff. Sometimes I'll sit in the Normatec boots because I like the way it feels, especially if I do a marathon and my legs are just trashed. I just like the way it feels. But I know from a physiological standpoint, it doesn't really work. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, no, recovery is eating and sleeping. If you're not getting 8 hours of sleep a night, it doesn't matter if you're doing the percussive massage or foam rolling or, stretching or whatever it is. It's not going to do you any good. So yeah, eating right and sleeping. You mentioned stretching. I do dynamic stretches before and after all of my workouts. I don't static stretch hardly at all. I need to start doing my upper body a little bit because I have pretty poor shoulder flexibility. So I feel like that's kind of limiting me in my swim performance. So I'm going to try that out this winter and see how it does. But
So
for the most part, what's that? Yeah, like before bed or even after a run when the blood flow is increased so that the muscles are warm already.
Yes.
But
So static stretching after.
Yes. Yes, static stretching after. Static stretching before actually decreases performance in endurance sports. It decreases power, it decreases speed, no matter what sport you're participating in. Exception would be sports like gymnastics or diving or something where you actually need flexibility for. You would need to static stretch. But for us endurance athletes, you definitely don't need to static stretch beforehand. It will decrease your performance. You want a dynamic stretch. So those are things like high knees, butt kickers, arm swings, stuff like that. That is not the classic. When we grew up, you sit and hold 1, 2, 3, and 10 and do the other side. So, I wish somebody would have told me that when I was a high school athlete, because I would have been a heck of a lot better of an athlete if that were the case. That's why all these kids are breaking my records. It's not because they're better. It's just because the science is better, right?
Yeah, when I
So,
was in high school, they didn't know any better. It was static stretch.
yeah, me too. So no static, but I do dynamic before and after most workouts, if not all.
Yep. I mean, even as a cyclist, I dynamically warm up during my warm up for a race or a hard workout with things like you just said. And sometimes I get looked at funny because I'm doing high knees or butt kicks or leg swings, but
That's one of the things that I get a lot too is, people, they'll either look at me funny or make fun of me or, kind of snicker or whatever it is. And honestly, I don't care what you
yeah.
think about me, because I know this is what it takes to get ready for a race. And I know that I'm going to kick your butt when it comes to be race time. So who's going to be the one laughing at the end of the race? Like, you need to do what you need to do. And I know that that's what you need to do. So, if they want to laugh or, kind of point at you and make fun of you, then, that's on them. But
Yeah.
it's definitely beneficial for performance.
I do like the compression boots after long days because it does feel good. But what I usually do is I am laying down with them on, relaxing. So,
Yeah. Yep.
and then to touch on post workout food, what's your go-to for helping with recovery? What do you get in your body to help the body?
I just eat real food. I don't really eat a whole lot of supplements. I mean, it really depends on the time because I'm a triathlete, so I work out twice a day. So I'll work out before breakfast and then I work out before dinner. And so typically what I'll do is I'll go for a swim in the morning and then I come home and I'll eat like a bagel with peanut butter and honey and maybe a bowl of cereal or some eggs. Before dinner, it would just be like a normal dinner, whatever, having spaghetti and meatballs. If it's Tuesday, we'll do Taco Tuesdays. We just kind of keep it interesting, you know, ravioli, chili now that the weather's getting cooler, you know, maybe chicken noodle soup, but it's not really anything special. It's just real food, you know, carbs,
Yeah.
fats, protein, just kind of all in the proper order. I do eat a lot of Greek yogurt because that's just a good way to increase protein intake for me. And for endurance athletes, we might not think that protein is super important, but we definitely need more protein than the typical person because we are doing so much muscle damage that we have to repair that muscle. So increasing your protein intake is going to be important. So I try to get in some extra with that Greek yogurt.
Yeah. I like the Fairlife chocolate milk with a banana or an apple afterwards.
So good. Fairlife is so good. I love. I don't get it often because I will go through that entire, you know, what is it, 64-ounce bottle. I'll go through that in 2 days. And I'm like, okay, I can't be doing this. Like it's an expensive habit.
Yeah. When I said that, I saw you go to heaven for a second.
Oh, so good.
Nice. That's hilarious. Is there anything that you do pre-competition to get yourself motivated and ready?
Not really. I think that I'm a pretty intrinsically motivated person. I'm not motivated by things that other people might be like winning a national championship. I'm not motivated by that external factor. I'm going to go race the best race that I can. And if somebody's going to beat me, I know how hard they're going to have to go to beat me. So I want to do the best that I can. Like my purpose for racing is pushing my body and pushing myself to see what I'm capable of. So to get myself ready for a race, I just make sure that I'm doing the little things correctly, you know, sleeping enough the week before, eating right, doing some carb loading if I need to, and then just, you know, hitting all my workouts. I don't really have any workouts that I absolutely crush during the week. Like I think for the most part, my girlfriend always asks me, "Oh, you know, how was your swim? How was your bike? How was your run?" It was okay. It was good. But I never have great workouts. But I also don't ever have bad workouts. I can't tell you the last time I had a workout where it was like that went absolutely terrible. And I think that's one important thing for athletes is that, and I know even with the athletes that I coach, they're so hard on themselves that like, oh, I've totally failed this workout or whatever. And it's like, you need to take charge of your own training and know when you need to pull it back and when to push it. And really like the goal is to have a good workout or even an okay workout. I would much rather have stringing together a year's worth of okay workouts than, you know, a great workout every now and then and a really bad workout every now and then, because consistency is going to be key when it comes to, you know, improvement in the long term. And so, you know, for me, I just do the little things that I need to do, and that kind of sets the stage for, you know, having a good training week, a good race week, whatever it is. So no, nothing special that I do to get myself motivated, but just kind of knowing that I've done what I have in the last 10 years. You know, I haven't taken a day off of training, gosh, probably since 2018 and the only reason I did was because I was flying back from Australia and the day didn't exist because we left on, you know, Saturday and we got back on Monday because of the time change. So, you know, I still walked around on the plane. Like the plane had stairs, so I walked up and down the stairs just to keep the blood flowing. And when I say I haven't taken a day off, it's like some of my workouts are just go for a walk for 30 minutes or an hour or whatever, like lifting weights. It doesn't have to be crushing yourself every day. So yeah,
Crushing yourself every day isn't good anyway.
No, don't do that.
Yeah.
Pro tip. I would rather have you do an easy workout every day than crush yourself every day, because you're not going to be able to maintain the crushing yourself every day. The easy stuff, like that's where you get most of the benefits from anyway. And from a physiological perspective, and I don't know if you want to get into this, but with easy training, I think everybody's probably heard of the 80-20 rule, where you want 80% of your training to be easy and 20% to be hard. But during that easy portion, that 80%, that's when you actually build mitochondria and capillaries. So mitochondria are, we probably remember it as the powerhouse of the cell, right? And that's like the only thing about mitochondria that you remember from high school. But that's where we actually use oxygen to make ATP, or the body's energy. And so the easier that you train, the more mitochondria that your body produces. And also when you're training in that zone 1 or zone 2, you're going to produce more capillaries, and capillaries are the really small blood vessels that gas exchange occurs, so you can get more oxygen in and more carbon dioxide out. So if you can get more oxygen into the cells and you have more mitochondria to accept that oxygen to make more energy, that's going to increase your VO2 max, and you're going to be able to use more oxygen, so you're going to be a better endurance athlete. So by training easy, you are going to be far better off than training hard all the time, because you're going to be able to recover and you're having those positive adaptations. When you train hard, yeah, you get other adaptations like increased mitochondrial size and maybe, improving your lactate threshold, but the benefits of those are not as much as the others in the easy training, and you can't recover as well from that. So that was totally off topic, but that's another thing that I asked a lot, as an exercise physiologist, like explaining it from a physiological and microscopic level, like I think is important for people to hear and understand.
No, I agree. Train easy and build up your mitochondrial density, man.
Woo!
How about next year? What events do you have on the calendar for sure?
Yeah, next year is probably going to be pretty much the same as it was this year, the same as what I do pretty much every year. I'll do the Grand Rapids Triathlon in June. I'll probably do both the sprint and Olympic distance age group national championships in August. I might do the Michigan 70.3 again if my girlfriend drags me to do that one again. And probably like the Reeds Lake Triathlon here in Grand Rapids. And then I just have some other running races that I do. I like to do a lot of local running races. Like I did the Hot Cider Hustle a couple weeks ago. I've done a couple trail races the last couple of weeks, the Dirty Duel at Robinette's here in Grand Rapids, the Cannonsburg Trail Run on Halloween. So just some fun races to end this season on, and nothing that I'm taking super seriously. Just kind of the same stuff that I do every year. Nothing big planned, like the 4 national championships in a year like I did that one year. I usually do the world championships for the age group short course races, but I don't know that I'm going to do those next year, because one of them, the sprint distance race is in Hamburg, Germany, and the Olympic distance race is in Pontevedra, Spain, I believe. And neither one of those places are like bucket list places for me to go to. And, it's a long flight over. And so this year I did the sprint distance national or world championships in Montreal, and it's a 10-hour drive from Grand Rapids. So it was pretty easy to get there. But the Olympic distance championships are in Abu Dhabi, actually in like a week. And I decided not to do those because it's in Abu Dhabi and it's halfway around the world. And I just don't have the time to take off or the financial means to go fly across the world and spend all that money, ship my bike and, buy the flight itself. And so, yeah, not doing that. So I might not do the world championships next year either. And that'll be the first time since 2016 that I haven't done them. So that'll be something new, but I'm kind of over that whole thing anyway. And the world championships honestly are not as competitive as the national championships or even some local races that I do.
Okay.
Just because like that, it costs a lot of money. It's in the middle of nowhere, like there are much more competitive races here in the United States that would be more fun to go race, but I wouldn't get the world championship check mark next to the box, but I've got 4 of them already. So, what's another one?
Yeah. Right.
I know that kind of sounds like I'm being, oh yeah. But really to me, I don't put much weight into any of these things because I'm not racing professionally. I'm racing age group and like I'm beating other 30 to 34-year-old guys. And I know that the 70.3 and full distance, especially with Ironman brand, are sometimes more competitive than the races that I'm doing. So I don't really put a lot of stock into, I've got this many national championships or world championships or whatever. But, that's what everybody knows. It's like, oh, well, Todd's fast, so he knows a lot about triathlon. And it's like, well, I also have my PhD in exercise physiology and I did my dissertation on performance in triathletes, but nobody cares about that. They just care about how fast I am. And even at my last job, my boss, he would introduce me as, this is Todd. He's a national and world champion triathlete, not this is Todd. He's a PhD and has his doctorate in exercise physiology and performance in triathletes. Like
Right.
nobody cares about that stuff. So I don't talk about that stuff as much because even with my coaching, people care about how fast I am. And that makes no sense because you could be a super fast athlete, but a terrible coach and know nothing about the science behind it. So I'm not really putting a lot of stock into the accolades that I've gotten from triathlon because I know at the end of the day, that doesn't make me any better of a person. And it's really just something that I do for fun. It's a hobby. It's not a job. So I try to keep myself grounded and make sure that I'm not getting too full of myself.
Yeah. Speaking of, because we're on the topic of events, we were on the topic of events. If someone's wanting to get started in triathlons and they're in Michigan, what event would you recommend maybe they start off at?
There are a lot of good events here in Michigan. Michigan actually has one of the highest densities of triathlons per person anywhere in the States. Huh. So you could go anywhere around Grand Rapids. The Reeds Lake Triathlon is the first real kind of big triathlon that I did, and I love that one. It's always going to hold a special place in my triathlon heart because it's just right down at Reeds Lake, and it's really cool in East Grand Rapids there. The Grand Rapids Triathlon is another great one that's really well put on, and they have a sprint and Olympic distance and a 70.3 distance now. The Reeds Lake Triathlon is just a sprint. I mean, there are several around Grand Rapids. There are others like Tri-Walloon up north and a couple others, but now with there are two Ironman races here in Michigan. There's the Benton Harbor 70.3 and the Michigan 70.3 up in Frankfurt. I probably wouldn't recommend those as your first races just because they're the 70.3 distance. And I would suggest starting with a sprint or Olympic, especially if you don't have any background in any of the three. My girlfriend decided to do one sprint and then she did a full Ironman. That's not the way that I would go. I think any of the ones in Grand Rapids, like I said, Reeds Lake, Grand Rapids Triathlon, even Tri del Sol, which is down in Middleville at Camp Manitoulin, all great races that are really kind of small and not too overwhelming for somebody just starting out, because I know that can be kind of a barrier, especially with the swim, and people don't want to, get swum over or anything like that. So they're small enough that you'll be okay.
Yeah, that's good. Good tips. If you were to give advice to younger athletes that look up to you, what would it be?
Have fun. You're doing this because it's supposed to be fun. This is not your job. You are probably never going to make any money off of this. Or if you do make money, it's going to be, a couple $100 at a local race. Like, don't think that you are better than anybody else because you are fast. This is a race. This is for fun. And really, like, it's a game, right? It's just like any other sport. It's like we're just playing. We're out here riding around and running around and swimming around in spandex. Like, how seriously you take yourself. And that's something that I do at the start of every race, right before the gun goes off. I turn to everybody around me. I say, good luck, have fun today. And I give everybody knuckles. And like, there's no reason to take it so seriously because for 99.999% of us, it's just going to be for fun. So there's no sense in taking it so seriously that you can't smile before the race or after the race. Now, during the race, you can have your game face on, but I'll say don't smile during the race because that means you're not going hard enough. If that's your goal, if your goal is to just go out there and finish it, then have fun and great. But, for me, like I want to go and push myself. So I'm not usually smiling during the race. Although if I see a camera, I will point it out and smile or like give the person next to me bunny ears or something. So but have fun. And that's probably the biggest piece of advice is just to have fun because that's what it's really all about.
Is there anything else that you'd like to say before we sign off?
I don't think so. Thanks for having me on. It was fun. It's always fun to share my story. It's a little uncommon because, coming from a baseball background and now switching to triathlon, it's like, how did that happen? But it's cool. It's been a fun adventure. And I hope that somebody out there listening to this is kind of in the same boat and go, oh, I think I should give triathlon a try because it's a great sport and it really challenges you because it's not just one discipline, it's three. So even if you're good at one of the three, you're likely not going to be good at the others, and that will be challenging and humbling and something to work toward.
Yeah. Where can people find you on the web if they want to connect with you? Do you have an Instagram or something?
I've got all the social medias: Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, at ToddBuck1. So ToddBuckone. So you can connect with me there. I have my own website, toddbuckingham.com. I'm actually trying to finish up building out my coaching platform and like a contact me section. And so I do coaching. I coach runners, cyclists, triathletes, kind of all ages and ability levels. I've got, people who are running marathons for the first time, and I have some national championship caliber triathlete. But yeah, social media is probably the best way. Instagram is probably my social media of choice. So just at ToddBuck1.
Awesome. Find him there.
Yeah.
Todd, this has been a fun conversation learning about you and your success in all these different disciplines. I may have to try a duathlon maybe in my near future. Kind of sounds fun because it doesn't have the swim. Good luck with your list of events next year, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come on and share your story.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Rob. Appreciate it.
Anytime. You have just listened to Unpacking the Athlete.